This is Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and today's guest is Donna from the Donna Tha Dead podcast. Welcome back to the show, Donna.
It is nice to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, you're one of my favorite guests. I mean, you're also one of my
Oh,
good friends. So, I mean, that helps.
yeah, it does. It does.
So, but yeah, so this is part of the Tarantino series of episodes that I've been doing, and this episode is on my favorite Tarantino movie, which is Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight. So we're going to be doing the two Western themed or Western styled episodes. So
I don't know if you know, I really enjoy Westerns.
I did not know that.
I've never shared that with you, huh?
I don't think so.
I love Westerns.
Yeah.
I love horror Westerns. I love Westerns. I grew up on them.
That's interesting. I've never been a huge fan. I think that I like Westerns that are maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say off kilter or anything, but I think I like more modern style Westerns.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Django Unchained. I like The Hateful Eight. I like Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of stuff. There's another one that came out not too long ago called The Pale Door, and that one's on Shudder.
Oh, I've never heard of
By
that one.
Aaron Kuntz. Yeah, you should check that out. It's pretty good. It's a Western with witches.
Oh, I'm sold. I'm so there. Did you see Tomahawk?
I have not. That's one that I've
Oof.
seen people talk about for a lot, and I know it also stars Kurt Russell, who we'll be talking about. Your one of your horror boyfriends.
Yeah,
And
that's why I watched that one.
I know. I've heard good things about it. I do want to watch it. I just haven't yet. It's been one of those ones that's been long on my list that I just haven't gotten to yet.
Look, all I can tell you is it's definitely not for the squeamish or faint at heart, but man, is
That's
it
what I've
good.
heard. Yeah,
I love
that's
me
what
a
I've
good
heard.
Western. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. Like when they're done well, I appreciate them. They're definitely not the genre that I go to first,
Hmm.
but if you've got a good if you got a good hook on it or a good director or something, then I'll be there. Like I said, Tarantino's with these two movies, and then Sam Raimi's Quick and the Dead. And I don't know if you've seen Quick and the Dead, but that's an excellent movie.
Oh yeah, I'm well versed in the Quick and the Dead. I love everything, all of the Raimi cuts, the Dutch
Oh yeah,
angles, all of
so
the
good.
bad guys. It's really, really good. And I love it primarily. I shouldn't be talking about this because this is not what we're talking about, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love it primarily because we get to see a female Western
Yes,
hero. That's
yeah,
very. I'm not a huge Sharon Stone fan, but man, she was fantastic in that film. I really loved
yeah.
her.
See, I'm not a big fan of hers, and I'm not a big fan of Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe's kind of a movie dependent thing for me. Like I like him in some movies, and I don't care about him in other movies. And
Exactly.
so yeah, but Leonardo DiCaprio, nice connection here with the see, we're just talking westerns and we're talking
And we
connections.
just
So
go right into it. So this is great. So now that that I know the type of westerns that you like, I like the
yes,
conventional ones, like the old school ones, because I grew up
right,
on them. But I do love the more unconventional, especially the horror
yes.
westerns. I'm a horror junkie anyway, so if you can give me a good horror twist with western flair, I've been sold before you even. All you gotta do is say horror and western, I'm there. Um, so when we wrap this up, I'm gonna send you a list of the horror westerns besides Bone Tomahawk. There's a great one called
Okay,
Grim Prairie Tales, if you've never seen
okay.
that.
I
It's an
have not.
anthology movie, which I know you're not a huge anthology fan. I
Right.
think you don't. Yeah,
No. Yeah.
doesn't matter. You'll love it.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say. But I will send you a list. I mean, there's so many. There's like Billy the Kid meets, Dracula, and I mean, it's just,
That's
I
funny.
don't know. I have a I have a thing about westerns, and they're close to me, but the horror westerns, I'm like
Oh,
you. If they're more unconventional, then I definitely want to watch them. And for these movies being westerns, do you want to start with Django since that one's your favorite?
yeah, yeah. And it came first too. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Django. I don't know why Django is my favorite of his movies. For the longest time, it's been Jackie Brown. And I feel like they're both kind of neck and neck still for me.
Mm-hmm.
But Django, I think maybe, and I just saw something the other day too, and they mentioned, and it was like a video, like a YouTube video about Quentin Tarantino stuff, and they were saying that Django is his most violent movie, and maybe that's why I connect to it. Not really because I'm like, oh, I love violence, but maybe because it's the most actiony of them all. Um,
I mean, I can
but
see that. It actually is Django Unchained, the fact that it starts off with who were the was it the Spec it wasn't the Spec
the
brothers.
Spec
Who was
Brothers, yeah,
Yeah, that they had the chain gang, and then, of course we see Schultz come in, and I just remember seeing this movie in theater, and that
yes,
part after Schultz has found who Django is, and they're leaving, and they leave all of the slaves with them, and the guy, he gives him the shotgun, and then he shoots him, and then the guy basically explodes like a grape. And
yes,
I was like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't
yeah.
expect to see that.
That's something I noticed too with this movie, and maybe I think it's also in Hateful Eight. I don't know. I don't think it's not nearly as prevalent in the other movies, but in these two movies, he really over exaggerates when people get shot, like the
Yeah.
geysers of blood that just burst out of people. It's hilarious. I love it though, because he makes these movies to be fun and to be hyper real. And so that's what I love about it, is that the violence is so cartoonish in a lot of ways that it takes away from some of the, I guess, some of the
Kind
harshness
of the
of it.
harshness of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so absurd, that somebody would
Yeah.
explode, like you said, in a geyser of blood just squelching
Yeah.
out everywhere. By the way, squelching is my favorite word to say when I see these scenes. It's like, because it's just fountains and fountains, like when you watch
Yeah.
Evil Dead and you see like gallons of blood,
Exactly.
and it's like, that couldn't be in the human body. What are you doing here? But I love
Like,
seeing it.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Is like whenever he shoots them and it just like ejects like so much. There's no way the body would do that. Like don't get me wrong. I understand arterial spray and everything like that, but they're getting shot like in the chest or whatever, and it's just like a huge like mess of stuff like exaggeratedly coming out. It
It's like
cracks
a
me up.
bottle of ketchup just exploded somewhere. It's like,
Right?
so let's just start out by saying this. You've seen the Quentin Tarantino movies, and you've seen Christoph Waltz. Do you prefer, is this like one of your favorite roles of him, or do you like his
Oh
role
yes.
in Inglourious Basterds?
I like this one better than Inglorious Bastards. I think Inglorious Bastards he does a great performance in that movie, but
Hmm.
I think this one is my favorite of his of all time. Uh, he's so good as King Schultz that he's such a good guy. He's he has great performances throughout this movie, and that's for me, I think, why I enjoy this. Between his performance and Jamie Foxx's performances, they are just, oh, and then Leonardo DiCaprio,
Oh my gosh.
but and Sam Jackson, like so many great performances by the major people in this movie, and even the minor people are really good. That's what I think. Yeah, I mean, you've got King Schultz as basically the best good guy, and I read that part of him taking this role was that he wanted Schultz to have no gray area, that he needed to be a firmly good guy. There was no like question about his
Right.
morality or anything. And then on the other hand, you've got Leonardo DiCaprio playing. one of the most despicable villains, so despicable that Quentin Tarantino hates the character.
Yeah, and that
Like,
says
and
a
he
lot
wrote
because
it.
he's had some really despicable characters. So for him
Yeah,
to say it is pretty impressive. Um, and there's
exactly.
nothing good about him at all. Like, you
No.
know, at least with Schultz, you know, he's a bounty hunter, so the racial aspect of it, especially him being a German, he doesn't relish any of it. Like he tells him, he's like,
Mhm.
I'm just going to use this to my advantage because I need to get to these other brothers and get
Right.
my bounty. Um, but with Calvin, it's just like, you know, he's grown up on a plantation and seen the way that his family treats people, and he's just evil through and through and so ignorant. Oh my God, the ignorance
Oh
of
my
this
God, so
man.
ignorant. Yes.
It's something else. I do want to ask you though, have you read
Yes.
the Django Unchained graphic novels?
I have. Yes. It's been a while, but I did. Yeah.
I really wish that a lot of the stuff that I can see why he didn't, because you know Quentin Tarantino, his movies are already long, but
Yeah.
some of those things I wish he had kept in there. There was some great stuff in those comics.
Yeah. There was more with the character that Jonah Hill ended up playing
Right, the one that was in
with
love with Broomhilda.
yeah, who owned Broomhilda and then lost her to Candy. Yeah.
I really wish a lot of that had stayed in, but what the thing that I and I know it's a revisionist Western, it's a revisionist time of slavery and in the Civil War and during that era. And I know a lot of people got ruffled by it.
Hmm.
But for me, just because I'm an African American person, it was great to see it. I mean, who wouldn't want to see a person of color come from slavery and give the people the just desserts that they need? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
that's what I really enjoyed it. It was like a hoot for me. Um, and one of my favorite things about it is a lot of it's like kind of surreal. That part where he's at, God, we're going ahead too far, but
No, go
the
ahead.
um
We'll
the
we'll go back and
portion,
forth.
yeah, the portion where he gets to Big Daddy's house, the Big Daddy
Yes.
plantation,
Yes.
Don Johnson's house. And once again, he's another person wealthy and just dumb as dirt. I mean, like he
Yes.
has no understanding of anything. But I love when they get to that plantation and, you know, Schultz is like, well, you can pick whatever you want to wear. And, you know,
Yes.
we see Django wearing the little boy blue kind of outfit.
Right.
And I remember
Very Austin
talking
Powers.
very groovy and psychedelic. And so I remember talking to a friend of mine and they were like, I don't get it. I don't get why he would pick such an outlandish outfit. I feel like Schultz picked that. I said, no, he definitely picked that outfit himself because you have to think of yourself in the mentality of a slave. You're wearing
Hmm.
drab, dull, dusty colors. He saw something that was bright and that was opulent that
And super fancy. Yeah.
super fan, and he'd never seen it. And the guy told him to pick whatever he wanted, and that's why he picked it. So
Right.
that part I thought was kind of comical, and then it loses the comedic part of it because when he finds I guess it's the Brittle brothers,
The Brittle Brothers. Yeah.
and the one brother is about to lash out at Jody, I believe, for breaking the
Yes.
eggs. When he
Yes.
walks up, it's very surreal because he's walking past all of the slaves that are on that plantation, and you know they're either swinging by on a swing, or you know they're kind of frozen like pictures. And I thought, geez, this looks like something out of a painting.
Yeah. No, it's interesting too because that's it's such a great scene, and it does contrast how he looks compared to the other uh, slaves there. That he's in this very
It is really
ostentatious,
beautiful.
it's very ostentatious outfit, and he, you know, they can tell that something's different about him, that he's
Right.
not, that he's not a slave. I mean, and that's a that's what that outfit is telling everybody, not
Right.
just the slaves, but also the white people and everything else, that this man is not a slave. This man is not, you know, somebody to be messed with.
Yeah,
And
it was a great scene, and I remember being in
yeah,
the theater and people like freaking out, you know,
yeah,
especially when he picked up the whip and he started whipping the one guy that was trying to get the
oh yeah,
gun out, and I was dying. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
right. Go ahead.
There's a scene where he walks up and Jody, who's lashed to the tree, who's kind of tied
Yes,
there, she looks over and she sees a mirror. if
yes,
if you go back and pay attention to that mirror, you can't see Django's face or his hands. You can only see the outfit. It's like his face is blurred out, almost like it's a dream. And that was the other
yeah,
thing that made it feel
interesting.
kind of surreal for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did notice the mirror this time, that she would be able to see him, but I didn't know that. I didn't see that you couldn't see his hands or his face. So
You can't see anything. So it's almost dreamlike. At least it was to me. Like, wow, who is this person? Like she can't really turn around fully, so she doesn't really know. And it's not until she sees him in that view when he goes to pick up the whip that she realizes, oh, okay, that's what he looks like because I couldn't see him in the mirror.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a great scene. It's, I mean, this movie is filled with so many great scenes, great moments, just so much. And that's the fun thing about it too, is that when, yes, Schultz makes that comment early on about using, the slavery as a means to an end, but it's only in so much that he just wants to make this bounty. But after that point, he sees that Django is, I mean, he sees him as a human to begin with, but he begins to, and after they talk a little bit and he finds out about Broomhilda and everything, he starts to teach Django the bounty trade. And it makes it begins to build, and he teaches him how to read, and all this stuff. And you get a passage of time. They don't really show how much, I mean, it's obviously going to be several months worth and everything, but that you see this evolution in Django from this person who is very subservient and very quiet to somebody who is confident in his abilities, and just confident as a person in general. And
Yeah, I mean,
especially,
he really,
because he's got to change over into that. He's got to become that black slaver character as well. And that helps bring that out, I think, a little bit too.
I like the fact that what you said was exactly right. He's kind of, when we first see Django, he's kind of, his head is down because he's still kind of with that mentality because, he's essentially still a slave. And the more he's with Schultz and the more they kind of bond and they're helping each other, he does get that kind of confidence and the bravado. I mean, I think he already had the bravado, but
Right.
he kind of just like you said comes into his own. And what I also love about it too is it's a lot like um the Count of Monte Cristo, which they had the whole Dumas line
Yes.
about the writer. But in the Count of Monte Cristo, he learns all of these things from the man next to him in the jail cell, and he teaches him how to read, he teaches him how to fence, he teaches him all of these things. And I thought that was kind of a cool way to kind of meld those things together.
Right. Yeah. And if you've read, the Count of Monte Cristo or whatever from, uh, what's the name, Alexander Dumas, that you can have that deeper understanding of how it connects to it. So I
Yeah.
do enjoy that. That's a part of all of that too. You get these multiple layers. So
Yeah, it's a great parallel to that, because all of those things he wasn't aware of, and then to see him be the best, like you said, they're going to
yeah.
call you the fastest gun in the South. It's like, oh, that's
Yep.
such a cute little thing that he said that to him because he really was deadly with that doggone pistol.
Oh
I
yeah.
love when they're practicing and that the whole montage where they're playing the music and he's doing all of his little backhand shots and whatever, and we see him shoot that bottle where the
Yep.
snowman's penis is supposed to be. And I thought when I saw that in the theater, I was like, somebody's getting their dick shot off. I already could see
Yep.
it coming.
Yep.
And sure enough, it happened. But what can we say? We've talked about the two good guys. What about the despicable bad
Oh
guys?
man. So Calvin Candy.
You had to let out a, oh God, let me get ready for this.
Yeah. So I found it interesting. I did I did what I do normally is a little bit of minor research,
Hmm.
usually through IMDb, which is always a font of some good information, some iffy information. But I found that part of his performance that Leonardo DiCaprio based some of the performance on was, or at least inspired by the performance of Drexel Spivey in True
True
Romance.
romance.
And you can see it. You can actually see there's moments in this movie where Candy very much has a Drexel Spivey sensibility. And so it's interesting to see that, especially because I'm a huge fan of True Romance. It's one of my favorite movies,
Hmm.
and and Drexel. I love Gary Oldman's performance in that. It's such a small role, but it's so good.
It's
And
such an ick factor too. Like when
oh
I
god,
see
it's so
Drexel,
gross.
I'm
Yeah.
like, man, I just if I meet and can I say should I just say this? I knew people like that when I was in school, like in high
Oh
school,
yeah.
like those kind of guys, and I'd be like, please stay away from me.
The white guys
Just
pretending to be black.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you have no idea. And you can't tell them that they're not black, no matter what you say to them. That's like, bro, you're not. you know? But you're right.
Wow.
I can see that. I can see the Drexel Calvin kind of
And
comparison
in Calvin's case, it wasn't that like he was pretending to be black, because obviously he wouldn't do that.
Oh
He
no.
doesn't idolize black people like Drexel
No.
did. But Calvin, in his way, idolized the French. And in that way, it was sort of like this faux, like, um, but he also thought he was more important than he was. Or, I mean, he is very important, of course, Calvin was, but it just, I don't know, just the performance and just the skeeziness of it all. It's just so
Yeah.
much of the attitude just was definitely reminded me of that. And so when I read that, I was like, okay, that checks really well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because like I said, it's that ick factor. I just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. As soon as we didn't meet Calvin in the movie until like what about 40
An hour
minutes,
and a
almost
half in.
hour. We're already an hour and a half in. I knew it was long. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was that
It's
long, but
long. Yeah, because it's
um
two and a half hour long movie, and we don't see him until over halfway through.
yeah. And so then, the very first time we see him, and he's got his cigarette and turns around and does that kind of smirk. I was like, oh
Yeah.
God, this is gonna be bad. This is gonna be bad. Because he thinks he's charming and like you said, he thinks he's like a francophile and he's witty and
Yeah.
all of these things, but he's none of those things. It's
And he's
really
just
funny.
gross. His teeth are all rotten because
Teeth are
he eats
gross. Yep.
sweets all the time, and
Yep.
his teeth. He's just a disgusting person all over. And even like
Inside and
Leonardo
out.
DiCaprio like hated playing him, and uh, it just hated the character. And Tarantino told him to use that and to like go more with it, like get even deeper into it, like just make it a truly despicable person. And
Yeah. I
so,
mean, I mean, he did an excellent job because I
oh
hated that.
yeah,
I was so glad when he died. I was like, thank goodness. Like I
right?
could breathe. But it's funny too. I love how it was really about Schultz and Django, but then you got to see the opposite side, which is the
Yep.
evil version, which is Stephen and Calvin, because
Yeah.
Stephen actually did all of the moves, and Calvin just,
Yep.
he made him think that he was doing everything himself, but everything was
Steven
done through
was
Stephen.
actually the one like catching everything. He's like, wait, something's going on here.
Yeah,
So Yeah. And talk about truly despicable people. Steven is just a horrid person.
He's
Um,
the worst of the worst. And
yeah.
and we have to realize that somewhere that's based on some truths. I mean,
Oh
in
yeah.
slavery, that is definitely a sad thing to think about. But if you don't want people doing things to you, you make sure you do it to other people, and that
Yep.
was Stephen's way of longevity. I mean,
Yep.
he lived in the house or lived near the house or whatever, and Calvin just relied on him for everything. So
Exactly.
it was hard to watch it, but it also was funny to watch it because I like Sam Jam and pretty much everything, and I thought, God,
Oh
he's
man.
just the worst.
Yeah.
He's the
No, Sam
worst.
Jackson. Sam Jackson is one of my favorite actors of all time. Like seriously. Um, but yeah, in this movie, he is so just downright evil that
Hmm.
yeah, you just hate the character. And
You hate the
and
character, and then you also I also loved watching it because I wanted to see how the culmination of these two strong people were gonna, as soon as Django rode up on that horse. And I don't know, maybe it was from my perspective, I felt like Stephen was instantaneously jealous of the fact that here is this Black person doing something that I would never be able to do.
yeah, that he'll never get to do. Yeah.
He'll never get to be that equal with that gentleman. Like when they get there and he's like, oh, he's not a slave, he works with him or whatever, whatever. And Stephen was just like, he couldn't fathom
Well, and
having
that's the
someone
thing
being
too,
equal.
because in that hierarchy, as I understand it, in the way that the times of the slavery worked and everything like that, you had the slaves that were there, and then you had house slaves that were better because they had to be better dressed and they were
Hmm.
treated a little bit better and everything. And then you had the head house slave, which was what Stephen was, and there were other ones. And those house slaves had to control all the other slaves, so they were given a lot more authority and a lot more freedoms and everything. And you see it in the movie. He's writing checks for Calvin
Right.
and using a stamp with his name on it, with his signature on it. And so there's a level of autonomy and freedom that a slave like him has, that but even at the same time he's not free. And he knows he's not free. He's got a high level, and people will respect that. And I'm sure that anybody who knew Stephen that's outside of Candy's whatever, they wouldn't treat him badly because they know that he is
He's attached to
the head house
Calvin.
slave.
Right.
Yeah. And but like you said, when he sees Django come riding in, that's a free man. And that is on a whole other level. And that's why he continues to try to knock him down and and suspect something is up the whole time,
It was
because he just
wonderful to watch it. I think
yeah.
just because the closer he got to Candyland, you could see the kind of hatred that's building in him. Like he couldn't understand what the hell was going on. And then
Right.
to have Django kind of sass off at him, and it was
Yeah.
like, who the hell is this guy? Who's this up here on this nag? Who you got coming in this house? And I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna kill this man.
Yep.
I just these two worlds were colliding, and it was not a good thing at all.
Yeah.
Um,
It was not gonna end well at all.
I mean, because ultimately it really was Stephen that ended up making everything a shit show. I mean, Calvin
Right.
wasn't smart enough. They were going to write the check, take Broomhilda and haul ass.
Yep.
Um, and it would have been simple, but oh my God, Stephen was not having it.
But
He just
Steven had to
knew
throw,
something was
yep.
amiss.
Yep.
Um,
Mm.
and I will say for this movie, I know we're talking about the dynamic people, and like you said, even the minor characters are great. How great was it to see, well, one, Don Johnson, because
Yeah. He did
as
really
Quentin
well. Yeah.
Tarantino does, he puts people that we've seen on TV or seen in other movies and grown up with. Um, I particularly like seeing, I can't remember, I think it's Tom Wopat, maybe the guy who was
Yes.
the sheriff, yeah, from Dukes of Hazzard. He was like my favorite
Yes.
in Dukes of Hazzard when I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
he
I
was the
knew that
marshal.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that voice as soon as he came out. I was like, oh my gosh, is that the guy from Dukes of Hazzard? But two of my favorite cameos or parts in this movie, James Remar, and
Yes,
because he got to play two. He played the Speck
he did.
brother, and then he played Pooch.
Well, and that's
Is a
what's
Butch?
interesting too
Yeah.
is that he in the beginning his character is killed by Schultz, but then his other character gets to kill Schultz. So
Isn't that nice? I love when he does
that's
that.
it's a little circular comeuppance for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my absolute favorite roles was Mr. Mogi, the lawyer, because
Oh yes,
Dennis Christopher is I remember seeing him in so many movies as a teenager or as a young
yes.
adult.
That's so funny
Um,
because I didn't even realize that was Dennis Christopher
yeah,
until you just said that. I didn't
I
even think
knew
about it.
his face, and it took me a while after I got it on DVD. When I got it on Blu-ray, I was like, "Holy crap! I didn't even realize that was him when we saw it in the theater." He's in one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and I was so happy to see him. I wish I could see him do more stuff at this point because I think
Yeah,
he was doing like a lot of procedural TV shows like Law and Order and stuff like
yeah,
that at that point. So it was really nice seeing him. I was like, wow.
yeah,
And then, we've got Kerry Washington, who's luminous and beautiful as all get out.
yeah, yeah. No, she's great in it. She's got it's a very minor role for her, but her presence looms large throughout the movie until we get to her.
And she got naked. Woohoo.
She did get naked.
Not that it was nice because she was naked in the hot box, and I know that was not
No,
comfortable at
oh my
all,
god,
but
talk about like that. That for me is like feels like one of the worst tortures you can have. It's just like laying in a box, like a metal box in the sun all day long because it
you
was
trying to find a place for a shade and there is none. Can you imagine?
that's just and then having that cold water thrown on you. Oh
Oh
my
my God.
god,
No.
like that just like whew. I mean, because that would have
Yeah.
sizzled you, like
Sizzled you. Yeah. You would,
like
and your body would have been in instant shock because you were
yep,
cold, you were warm, you were hot for so long. I can only
yeah.
imagine.
Oh my god.
But we do have a lot of comedic moments in this movie too. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. No, and that's what I think is cool about this. And I think that's why I enjoy it so much is the nice balance of the comedy, the action, the uh the nastiness. There's
mhm.
so much of that. But yeah, the comedy for sure. There's lots of good, funny uh you know bits here and there. Outside of the blood geysers that we've already mentioned.
I think one of the funnier parts that does happen to have a kind of geyser moment is after they leave Big Daddy's and they round together the regulators, the little precursor to the KKKs, and um
Right.
they're talking about the bags, when they have the scene where
Yes.
they have the bags, and I can't see in this damn thing, and the guy's like, well, my wife sat and cut holes for 40 bags, you sons of bitches. And I mean, that scene had me dying, especially
Yeah.
Jonah Hill. Like,
Jonah
do you
Hill.
have another bag?
Yeah.
No, nobody brought another bag. I was just asking. I was like, what in
Yeah.
the hell? But it's always those people that think they're the cream of the crop, and they're like
Oh
dumb
yeah.
as just just dumb as a bag of
Dumb as
rocks.
fucking dirt. Yeah.
So I love seeing that,
Ah,
and then to have them go and do their raid. Big Daddy gives the whole speech. It doesn't matter if you can see or if I can see, all that matters is if the horse can see, that's the raid. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please kill this man.
oh
I think I
man, and
say
it's
that
such a
every time I
great
watch these.
sequence. Yeah, and it's
It's
such a great
beautiful.
sequence too, where he just like he sets them up and he explodes that dynamite, and just they all go flying.
It's
Oh
great, and
man.
then I love that shot too because when it explodes, when that dentist wagon explodes,
Yeah.
Django's face lights up. He looks like he's all of 5 years old because he's probably
Yeah.
never seen that kind of gore and explosions, and I love Jamie Foxx's face in that moment because he really looks like he was wowed. I don't know if that was
Yeah.
acting. That might have just been him being like, "Holy shit, that's a pretty big explosion," you know? Um, and then of course Schultz is about to take out Big Daddy, and he lets Django do it, and then that's when we see the kind of splatter on the horse, and
Yep.
you know that body falls off. I kind of like that splatter too. I think in his own way, he was trying to make a social commentary, especially when they get the Brittle brothers and he shoots the
Hmm.
one brother and the blood
The
just
blood goes on the
splatters over
cotton.
the
Yep.
cotton. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was a really good scene too. Like a very, very like cool cinematic moment where you see him get shot and then there's just that blood spray onto the cotton,
Yeah.
and
It's
yeah.
it's definitely one of my favorites, and I um I really enjoy watching it in the theater just because everybody else
Yeah.
seemed to be enjoying it. I had the same experience when we saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Everybody was really into that movie, and
Yeah.
um, it, it's one of those things that you get to see that camaraderie and that friendship build, and you get to see him on that quest for his wife. Just like Schultz said, you
Yeah.
know, when I meet a real life Siegfried, it's my honor to help him find his
Exactly.
Broomhilda. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. But once again, we always have to talk a little trivia. So you know Broomhilda von Shaft.
Von Shaft. I was just about to mention this.
So Broomhilda von Shaft, we are now to possibly believe that Django and Broomhilda are the what are we great grandparents of Shaft?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
John Shaft himself. Yeah. So
I mean it
yeah, it's
makes
a
sense.
yeah. 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 And it's even funnier too because it's eventually at some point Sam Jackson becomes
Become
Shaft,
Shaft.
becomes Shaft.
Oh
A
my
variation of
gosh.
Shaft.
A
Yeah.
variation of Shaft. So I mean I love all of the things. You know,
Yeah.
it's such a it's a shame that more people don't talk about this one. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe it's just because everybody's kind of Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, and I feel like it needs to get a little bit. It's getting more love, but I feel like
Yeah.
more people need to talk about this one because I really
I
do
think
enjoy it.
maybe because of the slavery aspect of it, it's one of those things that people are kind of afraid to say they enjoy or say they like or or talk about in general, which, I'm like, but why? It's not like you're advocating for slavery because you like this movie. Um
Yeah, and
it's
once again,
like,
this is a work of fiction, so we're not,
yeah.
we're not saying that slavery was good. We're saying
Well,
if this happened and it was turned into this type of story, enjoy that ride.
yeah. And I mean, it's totally a revenge movie. It's like revenge against slavery. So that's what's
Exactly.
great about it. There was a line of toys made by NECA a while ago, line of figures. They had actually made some Django Unchained figures,
I
but
remember that.
they pulled them really quickly because somebody made a stink about them making slavery toys or something like that, like which glorified slavery. And I'm like, it what? Like number one, nobody's glorifying slavery,
No.
and two, like just because there's toys based on it's toys based on a movie. It's action figures based on a movie, not I mean, and
It's
not like
not an
real toys.
actual, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like based on a real event. These are all fictional things. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people read into, I don't know, they feed into what they want to feed into.
Yeah.
I remember those dolls when they came out. I think at that time I had just gotten the graphic novel, so I
Yes.
hadn't gone to the toys, and actually I have no more room to buy any more figures of any kind. So I think at that point I was like, I can't buy any more of anything,
Right.
and I'm trying to collect more of the graphic novels just because I don't
Yeah.
have enough of those. But to me, I felt that was kind of silly because once again, like you said, it's a toy based on that movie. That movie is what it's based on. It's not based on slavery. Um,
Exactly.
it's odd, and maybe that is it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. However, if we're going by Tarantino, they always complaining about something he's doing. So I
Always.
don't I don't know why you still would not talk about the movie because I
Yeah.
remember when well, hell, any of his movies, when they come out and there's like a lot of N words and people are like, oh,
Hmm.
he's got to stop doing all that. Okay, you forget that he grew up in a time that exploitation movies use that word. It didn't
Well,
matter.
and not only that, but he has been like, especially with the movies that he's making, the last four movies that he's made are all very period. World War II, the old South and Old West or whatever, and
Hmm.
1960s. So we're talking eras that used words, used terminology that, yes, we don't use anymore, and we shouldn't be using them anymore.
Right.
But though they were in use in those time periods, and to gloss over that and say that they didn't use it and try to just be like, sure, you could do that. Don't get me wrong. You could do that. You could take those words out and the movie would be perfectly fine on its own. But it wouldn't be as accurate. And not to say that he's trying to be specifically accurate. He's using that word because he knows it's a trigger. That
Hmm.
he uses it because he knows it is a harsh word that will make people stand up and it will make your skin crawl. And that's what he's wanting to do. He's wanting to push a button. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. Samuel Jackson is okay with it. If Samuel Jackson's okay with that, I'm like, look, dude, he's still working with Quentin Tarantino. So
Yeah, to this
that
day. I
means more to
mean,
me than anything else. So
and the other thing too is, like you just said, it's for that time period. Granted, when we're watching it, the people who are using these words aren't nice people. I mean,
no,
they're the
exactly.
most despicable people in the movie. So even Schultz, to my knowledge, I don't think he uttered it. If he uttered it once, he probably felt terrible after he said it. I don't think
Right.
he,
Yeah.
it wasn't something that was in his vernacular or something that he was going to put in his vernacular. And if he did, it was to play the part of someone who wanted to buy someone.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
I think once again, people feed into it what they want to feed into it. But honestly, if you
Yes.
watch that movie, the people who use it an exorbitant amount of time are the most despicable assholes in the movie. So that should
Yeah,
tell you
exactly.
something right there. Um,
Exactly.
so what can we say about Django?
Well,
I
there
I
was
can.
there
Oh, go
was
ahead.
another thing you mentioned, the graphic novel. There is actually a sequel that he wrote, also with uh, that is Django and Zorro, and it's a comic book. But Django meets an older Zorro, and they have an adventure together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's actually really good. And apparently, he did talk to. There was a potential at one point of making it into a movie. He had another person writing it. I can't think of the guy's name at the moment, but he did approach um, Antonio Banderas to reprise his role as Zorro for it as well. Lightly approached him about it and said, "Hey, if we do this, would you be interested?" And Antonio Banderas was like, "Yeah, hell yeah." So
Oh my goodness. I want to read this.
yes, yes,
I
it's actually
didn't
really
know
good.
about that.
Yeah, it's
Well, I really really love this movie. I cannot tell you how enjoyable it was, and especially the very ending, like we were talking about with the comical kind of
yes.
explosions of blood where we have the shootout at Candyland, and
Oh
like,
my god.
it sounds like bombs are coming in, the sound effects, and I
Yes.
mean people are just erupting in blood.
Erupting. Every shot is just like huge, like blood, like literally at the end too. They come back from the funeral, they come back inside, and the walls are still streaked red with all the blood from it.
And it's also that comical way, where he's upstairs, and he tells the one woman, say goodbye to Miss Laura, and she's like, bye, Miss Laura, and he
Goodbye,
shoots her and
Miss
she
Laura.
goes flying,
Flying.
flying
Yeah.
across the room.
That's one of my favorite scenes because she
I
just
was dying.
boom,
It
she
was
like gets
great.
yanked backwards.
It was the
Oh,
best thing. But oh, I know what it was I was going to tell you. You were talking about Calvin and his rotting teeth. right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming, I don't know if they ever said it, but I'm assuming, did they ever say that Candyland harvests sugar? Like that's why he ate candy all the time?
I don't think so. And I'm not sure that they ever mentioned that. But that would make
So
sense,
so
obviously.
the theory is that Candyland is called that because they harvest cane sugar, like they do
That would make
the
sense.
sugar, and this they have their slaves there to do the crops. And so it's funny because when we meet Schultz, he's a dentist turned bounty hunter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's getting rid of the human cavity, which is Calvin.
I
I
like that. I like
It's
that.
like
I
because
never
he's
even thought of
rotten.
that.
He's
Yep.
rotten from the core. It's like
Yep.
gotta yank that cavity out of there. I
Rotten at the
so,
root.
so you're right. So when he's at that point where they're at um the signing of Broomhilda, and he starts thinking about D'Artagnan and those dogs ripping him apart and what he just
Yeah.
saw, that's when that dentist kicked in, and he's like, I got to take this cavity out. It's out.
Yep.
I, I felt so bad for him. I was like, no, don't do it, but he had to.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
he couldn't
He
resist,
knew
like
he
you
wasn't
said.
gonna
Like
live, and he just
no,
like was like, I can't let this go. Yeah.
it was
Hmm.
it was a great scene. It was sad, but
Oh
it was
yeah.
a great scene to watch because he'd had enough and he couldn't let this guy go on any longer. And
Yeah.
it was wonderful. And that bittersweet moment, where he Django finally comes back from the Quint Dickey
Yeah.
after exploding Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Yet again, another exploding scene. When he comes back and he gets the paperwork out of Schultz's back
Paperwork.
pocket, and
Yeah.
he says the Vita saying, and I was like, oh my goodness, I almost got choked up. I never cry at movies, but that made me feel so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
Same.
yeah, it's a it's a fun movie. It's
Oh
great.
yeah.
I can watch it at any point and walk in and just be riveted to that screen. And the soundtrack is so awesome. How can I not
Oh,
want it?
it's
I mean,
such a good. I
he
mean,
always picks the
as with
best
most of
music.
his. Oh yeah, yeah, all of his movies. He'd like, and I was talking to somebody else through these episodes, and I mentioned it too. Is that with his music, I am one of those people who I enjoy the music, and there will be music pieces that I enjoy outside of uh like I can listen to whenever I want to listen to music or
Hmm.
whatever. But a lot of the music is it's so tied to the movies that one, I'm not like a big fan of the music in general, so it's not something I would listen to, but it fits so well in the movie
Hmm.
that I also can't listen to it outside of the movie. And
Right.
so it just fits so well, so good.
I
But
felt I
Django Unchained
felt
has such a good soundtrack that there's plenty of the music and stuff that I can listen
it's
to
so
outside of it.
great. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the only one that I've listened to the soundtrack that I can listen to it outside of the movie, and I find myself laughing at certain parts, certain movie parts. But I feel the same way. It's better to watch it with the movie.
Yes,
It loses a little something if I just listen to it while I'm cleaning the house. I don't know if that
right.
makes sense. Um,
No, because it's so tied to the scenes that like the way he builds these movies and the music together that they're so indelible to each other. And without one, you're kind of missing something. So
yeah.
for sure.
It's great. Like I love, like we said, I love everybody in this movie. I love even, Walton Goggins, and, just um all of the bit player, even Quentin Tarantino, and, his his horrible Australian
His
accent.
horrible Australian accent.
Oh my gosh. At least Parks had the decency to not try to do one. He
Right.
just, showed up and did his job and left. But
Quentin's like, you know what?
yeah,
I'm going to try and do an Australian accent.
and
I'll
we're
get
like,
that right.
please don't. Everybody's like, please don't, Quentin. Don't do it. But it's fun. I remember it
It
because
is.
it's so over, and that's what those movies would be. You'd have some over the top actor just
Yeah.
hamming it up to the point where it was just god awful. But um I enjoyed it. I do. I think it was on constant loop once we owned it on Blu-ray, which is funny because I won 2 copies of this Blu-ray back when it came out. It
Oh
was
wow.
crazy. Yeah, it was some little contest, and you were supposed to take a picture of gates. It was like a one of my very first Instagram contests that I won, and in South Carolina where I live, there are a lot of like historic gates. And so
Oh,
I
okay.
took a picture of one and sent it, and then I took a picture of another one and sent it because I had 2 accounts. Ooh, I cheated. And
And cheated.
so one went to my mother-in-law, so one came to me. So I have 2 now. I have one that's unopened and one that's open. I don't know what
Nice.
I'm saving it for, but yeah.
Yeah. Saving it for when the other one fails.
Yeah, because I've watched it so many times, probably. Yeah.
Right.
I think I
Thank
was
God
gonna give it
Blu-rays
to
don't degrade like
like
a VHS does.
right? I was gonna give 1 copy to one of my sons. That's what it was. I won
Oh,
2,
there you
and
go.
then I was gonna get. That's what happened. I don't have the other one. I'm just now thinking about. I have a, I have one copy of Us that I won that is unopened, and nobody wants
There
that
you go.
one, so I'm keeping it.
Oh, it's just
You
lame.
already have it. You don't need it.
No, I know I have it. I don't need a copy. I'm just saying like nobody wants it. I'm like, why? That's such a
Because
good movie. So
we've
we've already
watched it.
discussed this.
Yeah, we've already let's move along before we go on a tangent to someplace
Right?
else. But
We're gonna go
anything
right back
else
into
we want to
us now.
say about Django,
I think I'm
the
done with
fastest man in the
Django
South?
itself. Yeah, no, I think I'm done with Django. If you are, we can move on into the Hateful Eight.
The Hateful Eight
So
with Dom Magoo.
this movie is interesting to me that this is the only one that I did not see in the theater of Quentin Tarantino's entire filmography. I have literally seen all of his major movies. I don't think I saw Four Rooms in the theater, but I've seen every other movie of his. Oh, and I didn't see Reservoir Dogs in theater. But since Pulp Fiction, this is the only one I haven't seen in theater.
I didn't see this one in theaters either because it wasn't playing anywhere close by. So
Okay.
I that was the only reason why I didn't. Um, let me just start out. Well, no, I started out with Django. You start out.
So, uh, so I this movie is one that I think I think I actually watched this in the worst way possible for the first time, and because it came out to video on digital, and so I bought it through Vudu, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and so I watched it on my phone the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is literally one of the worst possible movies to try and watch on your phone. Uh, I mean, it's not terrible. Once you get inside to everything, it's great and it's fine. But just to watch it on a tiny little screen is just ridiculous. You should not watch movies on your phone if you can avoid it. Um, sure, you can watch something you not the first time at the very least. If you want to watch something you've seen a billion times on your phone, go ahead. But something you haven't seen before, watch on a bigger screen, please.
Oh my goodness.
So I have since watched it several times. The version I actually watched this time was also the one that's on Netflix, which is
The
the
extended.
extended, yeah, the extended
Yeah.
cut. Now I haven't watched the original in a while, so I honestly don't know what has been extended compared to the original anymore. But I enjoyed the extended version because it's interesting to see the chapter breaks and to like go into the next episode
Mm-hmm.
and all that. Um, it's interesting to see where they break, because they're good breaks too. It's not like they just break someplace crazy. They actually took the time to. It feels more like because of the way it's filmed in one building, one room,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. It reminds me of like a stage play type.
That's exactly what
And
I thought when I watched it.
yeah, and so that gives you a much more claustrophobic setting, which is, I mean, what he wants to do, because you're supposed to feel like tense the whole time. But it very much reminds me of both Reservoir Dogs and The Thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is intentional because those are the two movies that he got the most inspiration from in doing this movie.
And I think it
So,
shows too. I
oh
mean, we've got the isolated setting, we've got the little the various people in this place that either do or do not know each other. There's
yeah,
definitely something sinister afoot. We're trapped because there's a blizzard. What I also like about it in that stage, that play, with those chapter breaks, is that it's also, to me, it's reminiscent of watching an Agatha Christie kind of
hmm, yeah,
murder mystery. You're not really sure what's afoot, but you know something is up. And kind of like a Sherlock Holmes and Watson we get with Major Major Marquess as
yes,
Walton Goggins' character. We get the two of them, Mannix and him, should never be considered partners. And the fact that
no,
they're solving this mystery together says a lot, because we have one of the
oh
most
yeah,
racist, stupid redneck people that we could ever meet. And we have a person who's a bounty hunter, a black bounty hunter who's killed black and white people. He's not discerning. He's just trying to
no,
make his money and keep himself alive. And these people have no reason to be working together, but we need to figure out what's going on in this isolated location of Minnie's haberdashery, which
yeah,
I love. I love everything about it, and I love when the very first time I laid eyes on it, because my mother, who's no longer here, I grew up watching Agatha Christie movies with her, and I immediately said, "Yeah, something's up."
yeah,
Like
oh
I
yeah,
immediately started sizing everybody up, and I think that was the gleefulness of it, trying to figure out what was going on. It was which we let me just go back. We forgot to mention Bruce Dern in his uh, cameo in Django, because he's really
yeah,
great in this movie.
yeah, yeah,
He's such
definitely.
a great character to watch in this movie. But you know, we get that initial meeting of my boyfriend Kurt Russell. I just want everybody to know. I know he's married or whatever, but he's mine.
And
Um,
you're married yourself, and don't forget that part.
am I married? Who
You
who
know,
told you that?
that's what I've been told.
I don't know. I live with somebody. I don't know. So so Kurt Russell, we see them, we see the stagecoach, we see what is his name? OB. We see OB.
Ob,
Is it
yeah,
OB? Yeah. So and
yeah,
they're going, and and then we see Sam Jam in the snow wanting to get on a stagecoach, and we see Jennifer Jason Leigh and her face is all beat up to hell and shit, and we don't know what's going
yeah,
on. I know you remember the controversy when this film came out, because people were like, "Oh, in this movie, he's punching this woman, and and they're shooting at her, and they're just, being so misogynistic." And I'm thinking, you do realize that she's on her way to get hanged, right?
yeah.
Like
She's
she's
like a
not a good
murderer.
person.
She's not a good person at
It's not like
all.
she's just a regular woman they picked up off the street. This is a criminal.
Right?
I mean, they're not going to be nice to a criminal, right?
No.
So I once
I mean,
again, people see what they want.
like they say in the movie, most bounty hunters are just going to shoot you in the back, take you in dead because it's
They
dead or
don't want to
alive,
waste the time.
and they're
Yeah,
not
they
going to
don't want to
waste the
waste the
time or
time,
energy bringing you in.
or
But
or fighting you when you try to escape. They're just going to shoot you. But
yeah,
when John Root brings you in, you're going to hang. That's it.
gonna hang. Yeah,
So it's like, every time she makes a remark and he, gives her the elbow
pops her
drop or
run right in the
punches her
face.
in the
Yeah,
face, and I'm like, she's a criminal." I mean,
yeah,
I understand that she's a woman. Trust me, I'm a woman. I don't glorify violence against anybody, let alone women. But this is
right.
a work of fiction, and she is a criminal.
Well, this is something that's interesting too because I just saw something where somebody asked, which was the weirdest thing, is that how can Quentin Tarantino glorify violence on screen in movies, but also be against violence in real life? And it's because real life is different from the movies, people.
Yeah. It's
We could all
fiction.
enjoy it. Like, I love Tarantino movies. I love John Wick movies. I love violent. I love horror movies. You know, people are getting dismembered. Like the craziest kills, the better.
Hmm.
But for me, like even watching a surgery in real life makes me squeamish
Yeah,
and
no, I
grossed
can't do
out,
that.
and I
Yeah.
can't watch that stuff. I can't see real violence on screen and not be completely disgusted by it,
Yeah, no,
because
I'm the same
I
way.
have the brain power to know that what's in a movie is not what's in real life, and that
That's
the
not
people who
real
are getting
life.
hit and hurt are not actually being hurt.
Yeah.
So it's just that weird mentality that people have, that like they're gonna, you know, complain about that, like her getting beat up in the movie, when, like, sure, if she, even if she were a good person in the movie and she was getting beat up, sure, that would suck, but it's a movie,
But it's a movie. That's
you
the thing
know.
that I really have to struggle with when I speak with a lot of my friends sometimes, because they're like, I don't understand how you can watch that because they're doing XYZ to women. I said, it's a work of fiction. That's why I watch
Yeah.
it. It's not real. Of course I don't want somebody to stalk a woman in real life. But if
Hell
I'm watching
no.
a slasher film, that's perfectly fine for me because I know it's a fucking movie and I'm gonna move on. I mean, it's not
Right.
it doesn't translate. I'm the same way. I can't like when they have those shows of showing people having tumors take. I don't want to see any of that
No.
shit. Get
No.
away from me. I've had to unfollow a few people just because they constantly put that stuff in their feed and I get sick.
Oh,
I
hell
cannot
no.
see that. I can't.
Yeah.
But
No.
movies are it's fake. It's just we
Exactly.
check out for a couple of hours and then we come back to real life. That's I don't understand how people don't understand that. It's
That's my thing, is like, how do you not understand that separation? Like, and if you, like, my problem with that is too, is these people who don't understand that separation, I'm concerned for you
yeah,
more so
because
than you being concerned about me watching these movies. Is I understand there's a difference, and that one is not, does not equal the other. You
yeah.
not understanding that there's a separation really concerns me.
And my thing about it too is you have and I'm gonna go off on a quick tangent and then we can get back to Hateful Eight, but I know people who read oh my gosh, when I just started deciding, I know people who read 50 Shades of Grey when that was popular. And
Yes. Oh my
I
god.
never picked up that book. I've never seen one frame of that film. I will
Nope.
never watch it. And I implored my friend, I said, please stop reading that because this is not romantic. This is some
No.
bullshit. And the only reason you find it even the slightly bit romantic is because the man has money. If he lived in a trailer,
Right. Yes.
you would want somebody to arrest his ass.
Yes.
So
There's a,
please,
and that's the funny thing, is in real life it's the same thing. There's a thin line between gross and romantic, and it's
yeah,
all in how you
how you
view
perceive
the
that.
person. Yes. And
Yeah, no,
if you don't like that person, then it's creepy. If you like that person, or you think you could like
oh, it's
that
hot.
person, it's romantic. It's
No, I'm
the
not.
literally,
Mm.
if you do the same thing, no matter who you are, you, like, there's so many times where I see people who are like, oh well, you know, I wish a guy would do this. Yeah, but if you don't like that guy, you don't like that from
If
him,
you don't like
and
that,
you
you're
would
gonna
find
call the
that creepy.
cops. You're gonna
Yeah.
call the
Right.
cops. That's the first thing, and
So
that's the first thing I told her every time she kept saying, "Oh, well, you should read this." Why would I want to read that? That's bullshit. If
yeah.
he didn't have $1 million, you would not think it's sexy. You would not think it's hot. You would be like,
Yeah.
"This dude's a freak. Get him away from me."
Right. Exactly.
Now,
Yeah.
and I'm not kink shaming anybody who thinks that
No,
50 Shades of Grey is a great book. It's not, but
it's not. It's not a good
that's
representation of the BDSM
no. Oh my
lifestyle or
gosh,
anything like
no.
that.
Well, that's for a
Please do
podcast for
research.
another day.
If you,
We
yeah, that's a whole thing. But please do some research, because that's
please
not
read.
correct.
Just go to Google for God's sake.
Seriously,
I implore you,
Google.
please, and
Google is your friend, people.
learn to read good smut if you're going to read smut. I mean, this is not
Seriously.
it. But anyway, that was my I'm back on track now. So here we are at Minnie's haberdashery, which is great. Um, I I have to tell you, I love everybody in this movie, and I loved seeing Tim Roth and Michael Madsen. We get to see some
Yes.
repeat offenders from Reservoir Dogs
Yes.
that come
Straight from
back.
Reservoir Dogs.
I loved seeing them, and it's great. I mean, I'm glad that he brought Walton Goggins back from
Yeah.
Django, because he definitely stood out in Django. You know, he was that asshole racist piece of crap guy. And in
I
this movie,
love.
he go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say in this movie he is that same kind of racist asshole, but
Yes.
he's so much fun to watch.
He is that scene in the stagecoach when they're riding along and they're talking and he starts going off and off and off and Marquette or Warren puts the pistol in his face. He's like, no, 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 no. You all got
You
me
got me
talking
talking
politics.
politics.
I didn't want to talk about this.
I
I'm
didn't
just
want
going to
to.
sit here and I'm going to put my hat over my face
And let the
and lull
stagecoach
me to
watch me
sleep.
to sleep.
Like,
It's
okay,
so
here's the thing. I'm not a
perfect.
huge Walton Goggins fan. Again, this is it's a very specific, it's got to be, but this character is so good. And that's the funny thing too, is that like throughout the thing, he's got very racist tendencies, but at the same
Right.
time, he's also open to some understanding and some growth, um, which you see throughout. Because at one point, he does sit next to Warren at the table
Hmm.
and eats next to him and talks to him. Eventually he kind of separates himself from him. But then, and then later on, by the end of it, he understands what's going on and is like, hey, now I'm on the side of law and order, despite my
Despite
being a
our racial
racist. I
makeup,
don't want
right?
to, I don't want Warren to die in this whole thing. And it comes down to some tense moments there on whether or not he is going to take that deal or not.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and thankfully he comes on the right side of that.
Yeah,
Sure, he's going
and
to
you're
die,
right.
but you know go
It's
ahead.
really funny too, because I felt like we already kind of had an understanding that Warren was clearly a smart person and a thinking person. Like he processed that Minnie's haberdashery as soon as he walked in. You know, he
Soon as he walked in,
saw that jelly
saw
bean
that
on the
jelly bean.
floor,
Yep.
saw that Minnie's stew was on the stove. He knew something was going on, and he could kind of assess the situation, that something was amiss, but he didn't know exactly what, but he knew it was something sinister was in. But I like how astute he, as astute as he was, John Ruth was clueless. Like he had no
Oh, totally clueless.
he had no thinking of anything other than getting Daisy to hang to Red Rock. But what I loved about the longer that they were in there, and like you said, with Mannix sitting next to him, with Warren, and then he made that crack about the Lincoln letter, that already
Yeah.
let me know that Mannix was smarter than he let on, because he's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the way John says, y'all are practically pen pals, and pen pals is practically friends. And then it dawned on John, like John Ruth was like, oh shit, that was bullshit.
Yep.
It took him a while to come full circle, once Mannix broke it down. And I thought, that's pretty smart. I mean, most people would just say, oh, he's got a letter from Lincoln. And he was like, yeah, right. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was
Yeah.
clever.
No, it was. Yeah. I mean, it was clever for Warren's character to have that letter, like he said, because it helps let him move about in white company, because it
Hmm.
makes it seem like, hey, here's this black guy who's friends with the president. That carries a lot of weight.
That
You
carries a
know,
lot of weight. And like he said, it made you comfortable and helped me get on that stagecoach.
exactly.
And not to be personal, because I'm always personal. Um, but it's funny because the way I'm 51, so the way I navigate through the world is, my mother has always told me to be exactly who I am and not hide it, because if people like you for who you are, then that's good. If they don't like
Right.
you, that's also good, because at least you know who you can consider a friend and who you can't. So my I guess my Warren trait is that growing up in the South, I I was always told to, I guess, speak a certain way. So I wasn't using a lot of slang. My mom was very against that. Um,
Right.
so my way of disarming people, and I don't mean Caucasian people, just people in general, is
People
that
in general, yeah.
yeah, people in general, I'm just quiet, and that's just my nature because, like Warren, I like to assess people before I start opening my mouth. I like to know
Right.
who I'm dealing with. And I think the simple fact that he knew enough as being an older gentleman and growing up in the South or dealing with slavery and all of the stuff that comes with it, he knew that the best way to get ahead in life was just to be what's the word? Popular. And by having a Lincoln letter and carrying it around with you,
Yeah.
nobody's going to question that because, nowadays we could just Google it or look it up online. Like, is Warren friends with Lincoln? But back then,
Right.
what are they going to do? Send a telegraph and hope it gets back to confirm it? They're just going to go along with it. I thought
Yeah.
that's probably one of the smartest things I've ever seen, to have a letter from the president telling you that, he considers you a friend or whatever. Um, and that pain, that hurt on John Root's face, he was just like, "Oh,
Oh man, he was
I guess it is.
so
I guess it's true what
devastated.
they say about you people." And I was like,
Oh
"Oh
my
shit."
God.
He
Yeah.
was pissed, but you didn't even rationalize it. Once again, that's how I knew Mannix was a lot smarter than he was letting on,
Yeah.
because he it clicked with him in like 5 seconds. Like, hello.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you
That's
cut
what I
out.
said. Oh, we blanked out. I was like, it was good because
Yeah.
I was getting a drink of coffee.
Yeah. I've
um,
made sure to take a drink once in a while whenever you've when you're talking. I'm
yeah,
like, okay, I can take a drink now.
but it's a great film. The cast of
Oh
characters are
yes.
great. Um,
Well,
and the few people.
and
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
no.
I was just gonna say the just the parallels with the thing between having Kurt Russell being one of the main characters,
Mm-hmm.
and then having it in this isolated location because of the storm, and then also the use of Ennio Morricone as the composer for
Mm-hmm.
the score was excellent, including pieces that were unused from the
From the
thing.
thing.
So there's so much that goes into making this like a version of the thing in framework, not necessarily in everything else, maybe in tone, but you also get these moments of crazy violence or crazy disgusting things when John Ruth drinks the poison and just starts vomiting blood
Oh,
out, and especially like all over
Daisy, all over her
Daisy.
face.
Oh my
Oh,
God, that was so disgusting and funny at the same time. And and then also by having at the end, you've got the two people. You got a black man and you got a white man at the end,
yep.
and they they're in an uneasy truce at the end as well. So it was an interesting, and but they're both dead by the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Exactly.
it's so many parallels to the thing, and I thought it was a nice way of kind of not remaking but kind of honoring it and making something his own, which again is what Quentin Tarantino does best, I think, is takes things from other movies, takes things you're familiar with, and still presenting them in that same way but making them his own as well.
Right.
And
It's
I,
always
I
like a
think that's
fresh
what's fun
spin
about that.
on it. I
Yeah.
I love how all of that came, even that one shot where they're kind of putting those posts in the snow so that they can
Yes.
walk back and forth. And that's all I could think of, is that line kind of leash that they had in the thing when they were walking to the
Yes.
different cabins. It's it's a great whodunit. I mean, to me, it because it was that stage play feel, and I really feel like Quentin Tarantino could do like a play. He needs to write a play
Yeah.
because that was very much. I don't know. It unfolded so well, and obviously the dialogue is always like top tier.
Yeah.
But it was great, especially when we get that reveal about who was working with her and how
Yeah.
why there was so many things going on in that haberdashery in that cabin. Um, when he started putting all of those pieces together, my favorite part is when he's like, he pulls the fur off of the chair and he's like, just what I thought, sweet Dave's goddamn blood. And then Mannix is like, woo, you know, he's like so excited that he's like figuring the stuff out with him and seeing them work together. I think that's when he realized, well, shit, I better stick with this guy because clearly he knows what's up. Um,
Yeah.
it's a great film, and I love that claustrophobic feeling that we get. I love seeing those characters. I felt bad about John Ruth dying, but once again, John Ruth wasn't a nice person either. So he's a
Yeah.
bounty hunter, but he wasn't, the nicest person. Um, I felt the worst for Obi. I felt the worst for him. Um,
Yeah.
because he was already out there in the snow. I love that hilarious part where he comes in and he's like, I ain't never going in that shit ever again.
And then
He's
he
like
has to go back
frozen.
out one more time.
Exactly. It's like,
I was like, oh my God.
I
Yeah.
felt so,
That was,
and then him being poisoned, that was the worst. I felt
oh
so bad
yeah.
because he had no stake in it. He was literally just
He
a
had no
stagecoach
stake in
driver.
either way. Yeah.
Nope. Wasn't making any bounty money. He was just there to drive these people where they needed to go. Um, and then we get, of course, the comical explosion when Bob gets his head shot, his head blown off. Um, and the shootout makes me think a lot of Reservoir Dogs when they have like a
Yeah.
lot of the slow motion shootout parts. It's a great film too. I feel like if you're if you're hot and it's a hot day, I always put on cold movies, and that's definitely one that I watched. I watched it, I think, this past Sunday because it was sweltering in here, and we were
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, I'm putting on something cold. It's usually The Thing or Fargo, but now it's Hateful Eight.
There you go. You got a third one you can put on.
Hmm.
It's nice and long. It's nice and cold.
Yeah, man, it's too hot here. You live in the
I'm
South, you
telling you.
know.
Oh, I know. I live farther south than you do. So
Yeah, but I live next to water. The humidity is terrible here on this
oh man, I
island.
bet. I bet.
Um, but you know, there are a few things I do like. It's like how we have the little clues, once again, like we said, with
Hmm.
Minnie Stew, and he gives the whole speech about, my uncle, what's it, his Uncle Charlie or somebody that
Yeah,
used to
always
cook the
makes it the
stew.
same way. Yeah.
Right. And he's like, yeah, that's Minnie Stew. She didn't just make it and then left a week ago. She
Yeah.
just made the stew. And I thought, y'all really thought that you were just going to get away with this? Because
Yeah.
there's too many variables. Anything could happen. But I guess in their
Oh
in
yeah.
their mind, they had what, 4 or 5 people against their however many people that showed up. So the
Well,
odds,
and
I
that
guess
was the
they've
weird
got
thing too, is like they had no time to really do anything. Like
no.
when you see the flashback to how they got there just barely in time, had to kill everybody, and had to hope that the general wasn't going to say anything. Um,
Right.
but also, on top of that, just had no time to really cover up. And
No.
and so they had no time to really plan that out. And so of course that's where you're going to make the mistakes and miss things that can be caught by somebody who, like Warren, is at Minnie's haberdashery enough that he knows what's up. So
Yeah, he knows what's up, and I think, like he says when he gives his summation about the whole scene and how it stages, that the first thing he knew was wrong was that Bob said he was running the place because she didn't allow
she
Mexicans
didn't
in
like
there.
Mexicans. Yeah.
Like, oh wow, that already he already knew. Like before he even
Yep.
stepped foot in that
From
door, he
from
knew.
from the moment he saw him.
So how do we go through the whole Hateful Eight and did not talk about the infamous scene with the general's son? How do we?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, that's a rough scene.
It's
Um,
hard to watch.
it is hard to watch. Like every time I've seen the movie, I kind of distract myself during that because it is so bleak. And
It's terrible.
it's terrible. It's just, and the glee that Warren has in telling that story. And that's the thing too, is that like it comes down to it that, you know, Warren could just be telling a story.
He's just telling
Mannix
it.
says.
Yeah.
Mannix just says, like, don't believe him. He's lying. He's just telling you a story. And it could very well be true that he's just making something up. He'd never met his son, but he could have. And this is exactly how events could have happened. But
I I like it because it goes back to what I said. Mannix is smart enough to know he really just
mhm,
wanted to get a rise out of you so that you would pull your gun and he could say he
yep,
shot you in self-defense.
exactly.
So, I think his glee came from the fact that he knew this man was not, he was going to do exactly what he wanted him to do.
Yep.
And,
Yeah. That's
but
the
it's
thing. He
still a
was just
hard
doing
scene
it
to
to push his
watch.
buttons. Oh yeah. Yeah, I just like that's the thing is like when scenes get really bleak like that, they're really hard for me to watch. That's why I
Hmm.
tend to gravitate more towards horror comedies or things that are just like just fun.
Right.
Like I have not been able to even attempt trying to watch anything like the French Extremity movies or stuff like that, stuff like Martyrs or anything. Like I did, like that's like so low down on anything I will ever try to attempt to watch, because I I go into movies wanting to watch something fun. I want
Yeah.
something that's you know sure, get like okay, like the Saw movies, they're torture porn or whatever, but they have a story, and they're interesting to me, at least, that what story is there. um,
I mean,
is
there's usually
interesting
some
rather
kind
than
of
being
connection to
bleakness.
go with
Yeah,
that story. So that makes more sense. I like watching the extreme movies, but unfortunately, when I watch them, I definitely have to have something that's drop dead funny because if not, I'll be
yeah,
depressed for like a week. I
yeah,
just can't do
exactly.
it. Martyrs was one. Um, I won that. Oh my gosh, I'm talking about all the stuff I won. I won that Blu-ray, and I don't know why I end up winning stuff, but I watched it and I thought it was great. I've probably only seen that movie 2 times in my whole life, and I won it back in 2008 or whenever it came out, and
Yeah,
maybe twice I've watched that because it's too exhausting. So I'm with
yeah.
you, but I do enjoy watching the bleak ones. I just know I need to have something totally
Yeah,
stupid afterwards.
you got to be in the right mood for it to begin with, and then afterward you need something to decompress
Yeah,
with
I
it.
can't
Yeah.
watch it when I've had a shitty week at work because that's just gonna make me even more depressed.
Yeah,
But I need to watch it when to me, Midsummer, and I know this is not about Midsummer, but when I watch Midsummer, that's cathartic for me. It doesn't make me
yeah,
sad. But if I watch
yeah,
Martyrs, I'm definitely gonna be like, okay, I need some Three Stooges stat. Like I
yeah,
need
yeah,
something
there you
right
go.
now. Um, but this movie was great. I think
Yeah.
Jennifer Jason Leigh was
Oh
probably one of
yeah.
the more underrated. People don't really talk about her performance in it at all. And it's like we see her at the beginning, and she's racist and despicable, and she's a
Oh yeah.
criminal, and she knows she's on her way to die. And every now and then you get this little glimmer of she's probably worse than any of these men.
Oh, she's worse than all of them. Yeah,
She's
she's
10
the
times
worst of the
worse.
bunch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I love how as the movie progresses, kind of like she really is turned from being just a woman with a black eye. By the end of it, she looks like some kind of demoness. I mean, she's got
yeah.
blood all
She's
over,
got
she's
teeth
missing
knocked
teeth.
out.
I mean,
Yeah,
she's just horrible, shrew. She looks like something that came from hell at that point.
yeah.
That's how I
No, it's a
felt.
great performance, and she's another actor who I've never really like been all that interested in,
Hmm.
but this performance was so good that I was just like, wow, this is a great performance by her.
Yeah, it was great to
And
see her do this
yeah,
kind of role, and it was so wonderful because once again, it seems like everybody had a lot of fun playing their part, and I think
oh
she
yeah,
relished this part because when do we get to see a despicable woman in a Western to this
yeah,
extent? And
oh yeah,
just like, totally laughing, John Ruth is dying and she's like, when you get to hell, tell him Daisy sent you. And,
yeah,
she's excited that this dude, she even sang the little song right before he,
yes.
started puking blood everywhere.
I have some
It
trivia about that as well.
is it about the guitar?
It is about the guitar.
Go ahead and tell everybody about the guitar because
So
I'm sure they don't
that
know.
guitar that she is playing was a $1,000 um like heirloom guitar that I believe was over 100 years old at the time.
Oof,
And
man.
she's sitting there playing it and doing her song and everything. And it was supposed to be swapped out for another guitar, but he comes over, grabs the guitar, and smashes it. And her reaction is genuine. The
Is the real
reaction you see
reaction.
on screen is her
Yeah.
actual reaction because she knows it's the real guitar.
So for
And
everybody
it's
that's
so
listening,
priceless.
if you have not seen that scene, go back and watch it because when Kurt Russell grabs it, he starts smashing it. She's like, "Wait, no, no." That's her real
Yep.
reaction because he
Yeah.
just foobarred that guitar. It's gone.
So
Um,
now the people who uh let them use that guitar, who rented that guitar to them, will never rent out another musical instrument to movie sets anymore
I
because of
mean, I
that.
can understand it because but it
Yeah.
was an honest mistake. I'm sure he was
It
not,
was, yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't like
I
he was
don't think anybody
destined
was
to do
malicious,
it.
but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we're not going to take that chance again.
Oh my goodness. Well, I do want to say there were quite a few people in this that I didn't expect to see Channing Tatum in a Quentin Tarantino
No,
movie. Did you? We had
no,
Jonah
no.
Hill. We had Jonah Hill, and that was shocking alone. Now we had two
Right.
21 Jump Street people and two
Yeah, we
different.
had the leads of 21 Jump Street in
Yeah,
back-to-back movies.
but I never thought I would have seen that. If you had, bet me money on it, I would have been like, "You're right. I'll never see Channing Tatum in a Quentin Tarantino movie. That's not gonna happen."
Right. Yeah, that would have well, I would have never suspected Jonah Hill in one either. Like
I
you
think I
you
would
would have
have.
told me either one of those would have been in one of his movies. I did no way in hell would I have guessed that.
I would have said Jonah Hill just simply because he,
Yeah, because
he
he's
was already
done some
branching into
dramatic work.
Scorsese and
Yeah.
yeah, Moneyball and all this other stuff. Um, and then we get to see Zoe Bell again.
Yes.
I love her in this movie. I
Yes.
wish we could have seen more
Six
of
Horse
her.
Judy. Yeah.
She was so cute and bubbly
uh
and just,
yeah.
so
It's disappointing that she doesn't get more actual acting work, because I do enjoy her, from the little bits and pieces that we've seen in um, this, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and of course Death Proof. So,
yeah, she's great. Six Horse Judy is just she was so cute and just, I wanted to see more of
yeah,
that. Um, and Minnie's haberdashery too. I wanted to see more of that stuff. It was
yeah,
really nice. But unfortunately, we get to see all of these people piled up in the woodshed
yeah,
somewhere. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. The play, I think it's definitely something I wish I would like to think he would pursue whenever he's done directing movies because every time he has a movie he's like, this is my last one.
yeah.
This will be my last
Well,
one.
I think this would actually be something that would be, because they've been doing this for a long time. They've been making movies into like Broadway plays. I think this would do well as if somebody took it, not necessarily Tarantino, but somebody who understands Broadway or whatever, and just took it and put it on Broadway as I wouldn't want to do it as a musical like a lot of these are getting done, but definitely as
Right.
a very prestigious, play, would be interesting,
Yeah. I mean,
to
because
see them do.
even though we talked about the Reservoir Dogs and the Thing homages in this film, to me too, just because I'm a mystery lover, it feels like very much like and then there were none, an Agatha Christie tale, where they basically have these people in a secluded area and they're dying one by one, and
Right.
at the end of it, i- it's bleak for everybody.
Yeah.
I just love the overall tone of this one, and like I said, I think it's just because there's a mystery and there's things afoot, and we're just trying to figure out what's going on and who's behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
it,
And
it
great
and I love
performances
his
by everybody.
narration. I love Quentin Tarantino's
Yeah.
narration throughout this as well too. It's especially in the Sam Jam moments, when they're talking about the poison. It's like, white dicks and or black dicks and white mouths, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
god, did he really just say that line? Um, but his narration just kind of took it over the top for me because I felt like
Oh
it,
yeah.
it just tied everything together like a nice little bow, everything that went together. But Kurt Russell being in it didn't hurt. So
No.
um
Well, and one of the other interesting things about this is that this was originally intended to be a sequel to Django Unchained. This was supposed to be
really,
a yeah, it was supposed to be called Django in White Hell. And
huh?
but he couldn't, I guess he couldn't figure out how to make it work with Django, and so he tweaked it and changed it and made it what it is. So it wasn't going to be like a one-to-one where um you know maybe the uh Warren character would have been Django. I think that's kind of where that could have been fit in, but
Hmm.
but the way that because I've never read what was supposed to happen or anything, but it would have been interesting to get like a little Django sequel in there. So
Yeah, I
you could
that
see
would have
where it
been
could
neat,
fit though. So
especially with Warren being a bounty hunter. That
yeah,
makes a lot of sense now that you say that. Thinking about it, that would have been actually kind of cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
but my question to you now that we've talked about the Hateful Eight, did you ever watch the Cutthroats Nine?
I have not. I do believe you told me about that, and I have not watched that yet.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to it every time I talk to you on your
Okay,
podcast. I'm gonna go. Did you
all
watch
right.
it yet?
Oh man,
Only
like I
because
can't
only
tell you
because
how many
it's
things people recommend to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm writing it down, and I do, and then
yeah.
I
I mean,
totally
only
forget about
because
it.
it is a western, but it is an unconventional western, and there
Yeah,
are definitely parts of that movie that I could see that he kind of put into this. Not a lot. Not, it's not a lot, but there are little things here and there. But I will say
yeah,
I do love the overall ending, when they're together and they decide that they're not going to shoot Daisy, they're going to hang her because that's what
yeah,
John
yeah.
Ruth had set out to do. I thought that was a great touch, that they're they're both kind of gleefully laughing at this woman who
Right.
kind of is asphyxiating. But I mean, they fulfilled what he was going to do, and with him being the sheriff of Red Rock, and knowing that they're at their demise, they're gonna make sure she goes out first. And I thought
Yes.
this is great. They actually became like friends for like the span of 15 minutes that they're gonna be alive.
Right. Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
it's a great one. Those are two.
yeah.
I gotta tell you, those are two of my favorites of his
Yeah.
works. I mean, I'm like you, I like them all, but I really do appreciate both of those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like I said, Hateful Eight's become every time I watch it, I enjoy it more and more.
Hmm.
And just you eh, because especially with the extended edition of it, you just get to like live with the characters longer, and you get that mystery aspect, and it plays out a little bit longer,
Hmm.
and it gets more intense as you go along. So
Yeah.
the longer it goes, the more it twists, and you just feel more and more uncomfortable the whole time. So, but
Hmm.
it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when everything unfolds and we get to where it is, it's like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense why he said this. That makes sense why they're positioned this way, or why
Right.
they're acting this way. It really does make a lot of sense, and those characters are fleshed out so well. Even though we're only watching them for a short amount of time, it's almost like we feel like we're reading a novel, or like you said, we're watching a play. It's
Right.
they do a great job of breathing life into these characters. I thought.
Oh yeah. I agree. Definitely. Some and I thought they were good. Like watching Django Unchained and Hateful Eight was a good um double feature in that way, because they do have the Western aspects, and you get some parallels here and there with characters, and
Hmm.
with the bounty hunter aspect, and everything. So it's a nice continuation in that way.
Yeah.
Even though it's not directly a sequel to Django, it almost feels like a sequel, at least in tone and setting. Even though this is more set in to Colorado.
Yeah, I think they're on, yeah,
And so,
Colorado or Wyoming or something.
yeah, somewhere around that area. And so you get, different setting, much later time period than Django is, but it feels like, at least in tone and stuff, that it's closer to Django than anything else. So
Yeah,
it was
I
fun to
think you're
watch them back to
absolutely
back.
right. Yeah, watching
Yeah.
them back to back, they're very good companions together. And I love the fact that you do this on your podcast, because sometimes I go back and I go, oh, that would be a good movie to watch together. Let me go and dig those out and just kind of balance it out, because they just they partner very well. And
Yeah.
I appreciate what he's done with these characters in both of these films.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I try to, like, that's the, coming upon this concept for my podcast of doing the double features was kind of a weird little happenstance more than anything else. But it seems to work well. I try to pair movies up that will go well together, in terms of how they might work. And sometimes I pair movies up that accidentally pair well, better than I I had thought they would in the first place. So it's it works out really well in the end, I
Yeah,
think.
I
And even
like
when it
it.
doesn't work out well, I think that even if the movies don't match up that great, I think there's still movies that work on some thematic level. And that's what I try to do with all of them, is at least on some level they're connected and
Right.
give you something good to talk about.
I think you do a wonderful job with it. Honestly,
Thank
I've
you.
been writing a lot of them together, just so writing them down so I can go back and do that. Because I do that a lot on my podcast too. I'll tell people, if you want to do a good double feature night, you should do this and this. And I love that yours already has that in place. So I
Right.
keep doing it, because I like trying up the pair ups that you have.
Well, good.
It's
That's what I'm
great.
hoping. I'm hoping other people will do the same thing, and watch a couple of movies together that that I suggest or that I talk about, and they'll see that oh yeah, these are actually really good
Yeah,
movies
they
together. So
absolutely will. I can almost guarantee you they will.
that's my hope.
Well, anything else we have to say about the Hateful
I,
Eight, other than I need to learn
I
how to make Minnie's haberdashery stew, because that thing looked good as all get out.
That thing did look good, man, with
Hmm.
those big spoons they were eating them with too,
What?
man. Ooh.
Oh my
That
gosh.
made me hungry just watching it. And I have not had stew in a while, so I'm gonna need to make me a stew some.
I'm gonna look it up online. If there's a recipe for Minnie's haberdashery stew, I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah, you better.
I will. Oh my
All
gosh.
right.
Well, this
Well,
has been great.
yeah, as always, I love talking to you about movies. Yeah, you're always great to have a
Aw.
good movie conversation with. I have a great time talking to you. And then, do you have anything that you want to tease on? I mean, it's going to be a while probably before this episode airs, so might be a little while. But if you have anything you want to tease, or let people know where you're at online, and tell people about your podcast.
I don't have anything I want to tease, but
Okay.
yeah, I can let people know where my podcast is. So mine is Donna underscore the THA underscore dead, like dead as disco. Donna the Dead podcast. And I'm on pretty much wherever you can listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, all of those good things. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter under the same name, although I really don't tweet that often, but you can reach me any of those. So that's my little world. That's all I got.
Thanks again to Donna for coming on the show. Next episode, Hugh McStay joins me to talk about Inglorious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from our TeePublic page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.